Emergency Medicine's 2020 MEDTALK. I mean, the main conference is already over, and that was a massive success, thanks to Dr. Zhang. But today we'll be hosting a breakout session on medical education. My name is Teres Masli. I'm a recent MD grad from St. James School of Medicine. I'm passionate about MedEd, and I'm joined today by my amazing colleagues, Dr. Roland Zhang and Dr. Brianna Salson, in moderating this panel. We got Dr. Branka Filipovic with us. Dr. Filipovic is the head of the research at St. James. She graduated and is board certified in neurology with a postgraduate training in neuroscience and a research fellowship in neuroscience. She's certified by the ESFMG and has over 25 years of experience, whether it be in clinical medicine, research, education, and scientific communication. I mean, she single-handedly spearheaded the research program at St. James, making our Caribbean Medical School strongly involved with research, very rare amongst Caribbean schools. So Dr. Filipovic, you're behind every research paper that was published by St. James. What type of research would you say interests you most?
Okay, good morning to everybody. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to explain the significance of the research for medical students and medical education. And these days when the, COVID prevented students from getting more clinical hands-on experience, research can boost their application for residency training. And I think that the type of the research is not as important as it is when you have a research and have to and want to publish it. This is what matters, or to present it in some scientific conference. It also matters. However, what matters the more is that the research should be something that will impress program directors, and I'm talking about residency application. Now, publications have a challenge in meaning that there are so many predatory journals and conferences as well. More than 10,000 predatory journals that could really damage the scientific reputation, and it's pity to publish a paper in the journal that will not be useful for your application. On the other side, there are also predatory conferences, but I always encourage students to go to the conferences. For example, a couple of years ago, we had a student that participated in the that presented a poster that was sponsored by, you know, all alphabet, FDA, National Institute of Health, even NASA, SIA, and so on and so forth. And some representatives from NASA and National Institute of Health approached her and offered her, she was a student, and offered her the participation in internship, summer internship, and summer research program. Just starting, and fellowship. Starting a fellowship means that you put the foot in the doors of residency application. Now, of course, clinical research experience is really very important. Particularly, there is a special connection between your attending physician and the student that helps him to perform a research. It will be easier for the student to get a letter of recommendation and then apply, because this is how you show your interest and show your capabilities. So the main thing is to pick up the topic that will impress your program directors, and something that is of importance for your future residency application. For example, if you want to apply for orthopedic surgery, the program director will probably, he will be impressed, or they will be impressed, but they will be not so interested in you if your topic was, I don't know, glial precursor in transgenic mice in preventing multiple sclerosis.
You
So
totally have a point.
I will,
Thank you,
well,
Dr. Filipovic.
thank you.
And I hope we could talk about it more a little later on.
Sure, I'm here.
And I hope we can all learn from what she said. Next up, we have Dr. Devank Gujarati. Dr. Gujarati received his MD from none other than St. James School of Medicine in Bonaire in 2010. He completed his residency at West Sub in Illinois. Most of you guys already know that. Dr. Gujarati is actually board certified in internal medicine and his practice in Indiana and is now working in actually North Carolina, I believe. So Dr. Gujarati, thank you for joining us today. I always wanted to ask you, if you weren't a physician, what would you be?
I think that's always a tough question to answer. I'm one of these people that believes that doing this kind of work is a calling, and it's something that I'm passionate about. But I also have a degree in economics. I worked as a business consultant before I went to medical school. I think I would have been happy doing that. I don't think I would have been as happy, but it's definitely something that's an interesting topic to me. I think moving forward, I encourage everyone who's on this conference and my students at my institution that keep a broad field. There's nothing that says you only need to do medicine. You have the aptitude to do a lot of things, and so continue to pursue your interests, and you never know where it's going to lead you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Denny Goss. Dr. Goss received his MD from St. James as well, Bonaire in 2013. He has then completed his residency at University of Kentucky, and he's board certified in family medicine. He's been a practicing physician since 2016, and he's practiced as a hospitalist in Kentucky, and I believe both as an ER physician and a hospitalist in Virginia. Correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. Goss is also a voluntary faculty at Pikeville University. Honorable. Dr. Goss, what's one interesting fact we didn't mention in that bio?
I used to be in sales, actually, before I went to medical school at St. James. I actually worked for a pharmaceutical company.
Would you have done things differently, or?
No, I think I'm where I'm supposed to be, and my life's kind of worked out, I think, the way it was supposed to. I don't know what I would do differently if I wasn't doing medicine. I know everybody that's watching this going through medical school is thinking, man, it's hard, but just hang in there. At the end, you really can get there. So I'm blessed. I've been blessed many times.
Thank you, Dr. Goss. Next up, we have Mr. Luke Nelson. Luke Nelson is originally from Colorado Springs. He completed his undergraduate degrees in molecular biology and anthropology from the University of Colorado at Boulder. He then went on to complete a master's in health admin, and thanks to that, he built 2 residencies from the ground up, family medicine and internal medicine at Mercy Health. I mean, Mr. Nelson, growing up, did you even think you'd be the founder of a residency program?
So it's been an interesting journey for sure. I think if you had asked me a few years ago if graduate medical education would be my career path, I might not have guessed that. But that being said, I've been fortunate in my career to work with a few different residency programs and really have found the work very interesting and very rewarding. So very happy to be working with our internal medicine and family medicine programs at Mercy Health, which is located in the southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois region. I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do there.
And we're very proud of you. Thank you for that. I am joined by Dr. Nadav Moore as well. Dr. Moore is a board certified emergency physician serving as an emergency medical director for McAllen Medical Center and McAllen Heart Hospital. He graduated from Technion School of Medicine in Israel with honors, and he matched into EM residency as the only foreign graduate, a non-US citizen in the entire state of Texas. Can you guys believe that? One of 12 in US for that year. Dr. Moore proudly serves as the founding president of South Texas Medical Society, dedicated to advancing the care of South Texas. So thank you for that. In his spare time, he attended and graduated from law school in June of 2020. So if I'm not mistaken, congratulations are in order, Dr. Moore. So dual degrees, why law?
Oh, well, good morning, everyone. My main motivation for that is that I realized that I've been doing medicine at the time for 15 years plus since enrolling in medical school, and really haven't learned anything else kind of, formally. And I just wanted to learn something new and interesting that's not medicine. And, I always had an interest in law and, how it meets healthcare in different, junction points. So I went ahead and, did that. It was not an easy feat to, work, and just actually got married shortly after starting law school. And we also had a baby boy after, and it wasn't easy managing everything, but I'm glad it's over.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Must have been super difficult, but you made it.
Yes, we
So
definitely
Dr.
did.
Moore, Dr. Goss, Dr. Gujarati, Dr. Filipovich, and Mr. Nelson, it's honestly such an honor to have you here. You're an invaluable asset to this noble field, and you're irreplaceable in your respective fields. You persisted through thick and thin, especially this year with the emergent COVID pandemic, and it's changed everything. I mean, one thing I know for sure, interview season won't be the same this year. And that's why we have you guys on here, just to ask you some questions about the upcoming changes. Dr. Gujarati, given the unique COVID-19 circumstances and the fact that students will be interviewing virtually instead, how do you think applicants can strengthen their application this application season?
So I think I have a multiple part answer for that. First things first, just remember that as a student who is interviewing, you're assessing the program just as much as they're assessing you. I think that's a simple thing, but it's not a throwaway line. I know you're going to hear that probably more as you go through the interview cycle, but you are there to evaluate the program to see if it's a good fit for you. You will be under pressure. You will give yourself anxiety because it's what fourth year students do, because it's all new for you. But remember that, keep that in your mind, that you're there to assess them. You will approach it differently if you do that. For the fourth years, I sort of have bad news for you. It's a little too late to strengthen your application. I think the important thing is to sit down, write your CV if you haven't done that already. I hope you have at this point. But look it over. Look at the things that you want to highlight about your qualifications for taking the next step, and focus on those things. If you haven't done so already, reach out to your school to see if they have resources for interview prep, especially since you're going to be doing it over Zoom, which has taken me months now to sort of get a handle on. It's very important that you learn how to present yourself, how to answer questions, and be prepared for some of the typical things that they're going to ask you. Third years, you still have time. Continue to do the things that you're passionate about. I can't stress that enough. I think in this world, we spend too much time doing things that are not valuable to us. And then when it comes to talk about them, it comes across very easily that you're not passionate about the things that you're talking about if you're not. If there are things that you really enjoy, if there are things that you can delve into, whether it's volunteering at a free clinic, whether you do Habitat for Humanity, whether it's athletics, pursue those things. Take the time to do those things and strengthen the way you'll present yourself when you talk about them. For the folks that are younger than that, you still have a lot of time. And so figure out what it is that you are passionate about, reevaluate those things, and move forward in getting a lot of experience.
Well, thank you for that lengthy response, Dr. Gujarati. Dr. Moore, would you add anything to that?
Hi, good morning again. Not much to add. I think it's always a challenge matching into a residency program when you're not trained in the US, when you're not American. I definitely know it firsthand. So I do feel that when you do that, you start as an underdog. And I guess it depends on the strength of your application. It's more of an uphill battle for someone that's starting. I agree with the previous speaker. The end of fourth year, your options are a bit more limited as far as what more you can do. But some things that I would recommend. So obviously, of course, get the best grades possible. But also, I would choose rotations at programs that I'm interested in and also have a realistic chance of matching into, and really try to do phenomenally well. Stay after hours, take upon yourself projects that nobody asked you to take upon. Sleep in the call room if you can. Just be a rock star. I know some personal stories of colleagues of mine that didn't have phenomenal USMLEs. They required visa sponsorship, for example, which is always a challenge when you are a foreigner matching into residency. A couple of them really match into great programs because they were just they would not let go. Like they would live in the department the entire duration of their rotation, basically. They made themselves known and very, they really stood out compared with their colleagues, and that's really was the thing that got them the coveted spot. So I guess that's one thing that I would add.
I mean, that gives us a lot of hope. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is for Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson, you've built residency programs from the ground up, and I believe you told me that you're the first pair of eyes that goes through our applications every year. In your opinion, what are some red flags?
So typically we do the reviews in conjunction with the program director. So for our program and most residency programs, it's the residency program director who will usually get the first pass at the applications. And then depending on how they want to review it, they will sometimes include faculty members. They'll get some other opinions from other individuals. As far as red flags that stand out, the two main ones that come to mind there are step scores, which I think would be clear to everyone here. So a failure on a step exam, is not the end of an application, but would trigger some more close review regarding the overall application there. I also say sometimes the red flag that comes up is the date of graduation from medical school. So you'll find that sometimes programs really do closely evaluate that, and mostly to see it can sometimes be an indicator of where the medical knowledge is at. If someone has been out of medical school for multiple years and they haven't necessarily been involved in either clinical work or clinical activities to keep that medical knowledge up, that can make the transition into a residency program quite difficult, and might raise questions whether or not a candidate can perform at the level expected of a first-year resident. So I would say step scores and those elements are primarily what would come across as red flags there. I think sometimes in the letters of recommendation, if you don't have a letter of recommendation from someone in the specialty that you're applying for, that can sometimes raise some questions about the overall application. Personal statement, these are sometimes interesting to read and more just give a overall, some of those items that don't necessarily come across in the paper application. That can be a good way of explaining some of these items. But I would point to, those three areas primarily as red flags there.
Well, thank you. Actually, that's really informative. So a letter of recommendation from a person in the field. I did hear a lot of people say, if it's not as strong as another doctor in another field rooting for you, don't, upload that doctor's letter of recommendation. Would you still suggest, that those students actually take up the short, weak letter of recommendation from someone in the field versus someone else?
That's a good point. So you obviously want your letters of recommendation to be really glowing, speak to specifically how you were performing, or, that physician's appraisal of your performance whenever they work with you. So it is, really important for those letters of recommendation to be speaking very highly of you. And I think the best situation would be you'd have at least one strong letter from someone in the specialty that you worked with in the past or really connected with. But I think overall, if you're kind of in a situation where you have a letter from someone in the specialty, but it's not as strong or doesn't reflect as well on you as some of your other letters, then that's kind of where you have to make a decision accordingly there, and then see what could present you in the best light. I will say it sometimes though is a red flag for program directors when, I'll just take the example of family medicine. If you're wanting to match into the specialty of family medicine and you don't have any family medicine physicians who are speaking to how you did on your rotation or your experience in there, it can raise a flag whether or not you're actually wanting to match into that specialty, or whether or not you had a really positive experience during medical school during your rotation in that specialty.
Well, thank
But
you
I
so much
will
for your
also disclaim all this by saying this is kind of my personal opinion on some of these items here. And every program kind of evaluates items differently there. So I just speak to the experience that we've had.
Well, it's definitely very informative. Thank you so much. Dr. Gujarati, would you suggest that students address those red flags during those interviews?
I think I'll piggyback off Mr. Nelson to say that last thing he said is a very good point, in that if you've made it to the interview, potentially for that program, what you perceive as your red flag may not be as much of an issue. I think you have one of two options if you have something on your application that you feel is particularly weak. One, you can wait for the questions to come up and really practice what it is you're going to say, give it context, give some context as to how that's made you change either what you're doing or how you approached your next rotation. Some of it depends on what the red flag is. Is it a bad letter of recommendation? Is it a bad grade? Is it a bad step score? But you can figure out a way to approach that if it's asked of you. I think if it's not asked of you and you really feel like it's something you want to get off your chest, generally they'll leave an open-ended question towards the end of your interview session to say, is there anything else you want to tell us about yourself or your application? I think, again, if you have a good story and you can present it well, and you've had a chance to practice what it is you want to say, I think that's a good opportunity to address something, if for no other reason than to get it off your chest. You can leave an interview feeling pretty badly if you didn't say something you felt like you wanted to say. You do take the risk of sort of highlighting something that the program didn't care about. And so you have to weigh that as well. And again, a lot of that depends on what the red flag is that you perceive.
Definitely.
And that's really an excellent point. And I will also say that as residency programs, sometimes it is really helpful for us to see from an applicant standpoint, if there was a situation where they faced adversity or a difficult situation, how they responded to that, how they overcame that. That can be really telling in the overall application process, because that in large part is what residency is. Residency is a series of challenges. It can be a very difficult time for physicians, and for us to be able to evaluate during the interview process how you handle challenges, how you overcome them, how you approach them can be really telling. So it's absolutely true to measure, if it's not really brought up, sometimes it's not worth asking, but sometimes we'll ask a straight question about, tell us about a time where you faced a challenging situation, how you approached it, how you overcame it. And in that case, it can be a really good opportunity to discuss any red flags in the context of how you work to address it.
Well, then thank you. If we have, additional time at the end, we'd love to hear about like an example. That would be awesome. Dr. Gujarati, I have an actual question.
I'm sorry, Therese, you froze on my screen. I could not hear your question.
Yes, so some students send letter of interests, whether it be through an email or by post. Would you say that can strengthen their application?
Yeah, I encourage, especially if you know sort of the region you want to practice in, or you've rotated through that facility, I encourage as many points of contact. Now, again, you don't want to get to the point where you're being obnoxious, frankly, corresponding sort of frequently with emails and letters. But I think sending a good letter, a well-written letter that says that you're interested in that field, that you're interested in that program, what your connections to that town, to that city, to that program are. If you've rotated there before, again, that's a good thing to mention. I think those are good things to do. And also, if you have a letter of interest going out there, my hope is that you would have applied to a sub internship or away rotation at that site as well, if you really are interested. I don't encourage people sending letters to places that they're not interested in, just hoping to get in somewhere. I think there's better ways to contact programs. You can contact program coordinators, program directors directly via email. Those emails are generally very available. But again, do it in a polite way, do it in a way that you want to gather information. And again, try as much as you can to try to rotate at the sites that you're genuinely interested in.
Yeah, I've heard that one way too many times. So do we reach out to the coordinator or program director or both?
It's been my experience that program coordinators run the show. Program directors are sort of the figurehead behind the show.
Thank you,
And so
coordinators.
generally, you want to. I usually, when I sent mine out, I would copy both people on it.
Okay. And so how long should students wait before they send it up?
I mean, I encourage my students to send out letters of interest. We've had some students who've been very adamant about where they want to match. Either they want to go back to their hometown, where there's a teaching program, where they volunteered at the hospital, have experience, or they did a rotation somewhere that they really enjoyed and they really liked the program and the academic setting there. And so those are the times to do it. I don't think there's anything written in stone. You can obviously send one after you've rotated at a site, or you can send one and try to get in contact with a program coordinator or program director before you do applications. So for the third years that are rising now, say, hey, I'm very interested in your programs for this particular reason. I'd like to get more information. Can I ask questions of the program director? Again, you have to walk that line of not being sort of too pushy and communicating too much, I guess. But I think there's no definitive time to do it.
Thin line. Okay, well, thank you. My colleague, Dr. Zhang, will be taking over, and you probably already know him. Dr. Roland Zhang received his MD from St. James as well in 2017. He spent the next few years exploring different aspects of healthcare, including medical analyst at MEDTALK Home, assistant to the editor-in-chief for the Journal of International Surgery, and his current role as a U.S. Assembly counselor with us at St. James School of Medicine. Having successfully completed the South Texas Academic Emergency Medical Conference of 2020, he looks forward to applying to family medicine with a particular interest in academia for future medical students. Dr. Zhang?
Thank you, Dr. Masri. So my next question is for Dr. Moore and Dr. Gauss together. Joining us today are several students who are extremely interested in emergency medicine. Outside of grades and rotating through ER electives, what extracurricular activities or even hobbies could really stand out for an applicant? Dr. Moore, would you like to go first?
Hey, sure. So, obviously with emergency medicine, there's a lot of teamwork involved. It's a complex operation taking care of one patient, from EMS at the scene to techs and nurses and, your consultants in the ED and your, radiology techs and everything. A complex operation taking care of the patient. Any role that is part of any of those, I think would really be helpful. Obviously, the common one that you would see is EMTs. Definitely having experience taking care of patients, vital signs, putting in lines, understanding the, emergency medicine chain of care, from the field, to the ambulance, the triage, ER workup, admission. That's very helpful. So, I guess it's a pretty obvious answer. So EMTs would be definitely a welcome role. ER techs, I know a few young aspiring physicians that chose to work as techs in the ER part-time or even during the summer. And that allows you to get acquainted with the emergency department process, do some minor procedures like putting in lines and, helping with catheter placement or helping with, reduction of dislocations and, reaching out to consultants. So that's very helpful. I don't know if this is helpful, but I know on the physician assistant side, so obviously we have ED scribes, on some of the departments since COVID and the whole financial issues, that has really shrunk a lot. But there were scribes to physicians, and there still are. So for physician assistants, that actually doesn't satisfy clinical work because you're only typing. Whereas, working as a tech in the ER where you have like hands-on care on patients, you touch patients, that's really considered more. And I can understand the logic of that. I don't know if that's different with the medical residency application versus a PA school. So just to summarize, EMTs, techs, I do believe there's a lot of value in being a scribe. Some actually have like previous careers as nurses. That's definitely also a plus, knowing that someone has previous experience working in the hospital setting when they apply.
Thank you. Dr. Goss, anything you'd like to add as far as extracurricular activities or hobbies that can really help a ER applicant?
Or really covered everything. Honestly, everything he said. It's like exactly what he said. That's what I agree. I was thinking in my head, what can I tell them to do? And I was thinking like everything, all the obvious choices, EMT, being involved in the ER as much as you can. Clearly, whatever experience you can get in the ER will certainly benefit you. But I second pretty much everything he said. It's doing anything where you can show you can get along with the team, at least in my experience. So it would, if you can present that way, certainly would be helpful.
Yeah. Can I add something? Ross?
We have Dr. Allison Zhang. Dr. Allison Zhang was a former counselor of St. James, a very close friend to all of us, and is currently doing her first year surgery at Houston, I believe. Right? So welcome to the show, Dr. Zhang.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more about EM, emergency rotation. I did that for my second rotation, so in August. And then what I want to add is that although they know a lot more than us, but then still like you have to see the patient and you have to know everything about the patient. You cannot trust whatever people is saying. Like emergency doctor, they will be saying things, but then you just have to know a lot. They're gonna make it like a notes, like a 4 or 5 sentences, sometimes several sentences, but we need to know a lot. So if you are interested in family or in internal medicine, you cannot rely on the emergency notes. I mean, you still can look at it, but then make sure that you understand the patient, and then follow up with that.
This is Dr. Moore. I mean, I second that. I guess that's some tips for like during rotation or internship. But I think the way to look at it is like the ER does its documentation and its care that it needs to do its job, but it's very different than the job that the surgery team or the internal medicine needs to do their job.
Yes.
So definitely reliance on emergency medicine notes as your exclusive source of taking care of a patient is definitely wrong, and doesn't do good to patient care.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So yesterday during the STEM conference, 2 of our wonderful speakers, Dr. Nguyen and Dr. Miller, they are very, very active in NGOs and humanitarian missions. For Dr. Moore and Dr. Goss, how could a student approach a preceptor about doing a humanitarian mission, say in Haiti, I think in Nepal for Dr. Nguyen? When in their career, or even should they think about doing these kind of missions, would that kind of help them as a prospective applicant?
Well, I could
Go ahead.
go ahead, Dr. Moore.
No, well, I just wanted to add, I mean, doing international initiatives, I think it's doable for students. Obviously, there are structured ones, like, your medical school might have a relationship with another medical school in a different country or with another organization where you can just apply, or you can just Google it. During these missions, there's no, definitely it's great to have, and it's very important and essential to have physicians and nurses, but there is definitely room for support staff that's not, like licensed healthcare professionals, such as a nurse or a physician. You need someone to help with logistics, and you need someone to help with, like the equipment, and you need someone to answer emails, and you need someone to do admin work. So you can do that, and I've with the at least one that I was involved in South America, we had more than a few team members that were not physicians or nurses. As far as getting into an emergency medicine program, if that was also part of the question, yeah, no, I think it helps. I think it's cool, but and also have to caveat this. I haven't been dealing with getting into residency program in quite a few years, but I would imagine for a residency program director, like they want to know that you would be able to do the job that you're supposed to do coming into the emergency medicine residency program. So working in Nepal, helping out, with whatever medical issues there is great, is definitely a plus, but it's not going to be the focus of your application. The focus of your application is going to be your grades, it's going to be your USMLE score, it's going to be your letters of recommendation, it's how you did during your rotations. That's really going to be the bulk of the application. These things would be cherry on top.
Dr. Goss, anything to add?
I think that if you were going to do something like that, just my opinion, and again, I preface this with, I can just go based on my experience. If I were going to do something away, I would try to plan it in time where, I didn't have anything going on. Clearly, one of the things that at least I noticed is residency programs look at, do you have blocks of time where you weren't doing anything? So if you happen to be off schedule and nothing going on, that'd be a really good time to plug that in. That's just my experience and just my thoughts on it.
Can I add a little bit more? So if you want to apply emergency rotation, can you guys, am I freezing?
I'm sorry.
Okay, can I add a little bit more?
Good, that's it.
Okay, so if you want to apply emergency rotation, because I like emergency rotation, but you need to have more exposure. You have to have like not just one, like several like emergency rotations. Just, that's what I knew when I talked with my program director. Because in my program, we have emergency residency. And then they want, so that's why I cannot apply because I only have 1 month of experience. And then, and they want me to apply more. As nice as he is, my program director, he can write me a recommendation letter, but then they want more. And then they want more exposure. So if you want to apply emergency rotation, you have to do several emergency rotation. Okay, they're very competitive, big money, whatever. But yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you, Dr. Zhang, and Dr. Goss as well. So next question is for Dr. Filipovich. One criteria that medical students believe that would boost their CV is research publications, like you mentioned earlier. What are some research design ideas, areas, or topics that a medical student could research during their second or third year and then publish in time for residency application? Dr. Filipovich?
Why second and third? No, I had to unmute myself. Why wait till second and third year? I mean, at least in our school, they can start in MD1. We have a lot of publications from students and faculty that was made on the islands. And they have to start as soon as possible. As I mentioned before, the best option is to combine clinical rotation or core or elective with a kind of research, doing something related to the research and then publish. If you want to publish in a decent journal, and I mean really decent journal, it takes time because they have editors, they have their criteria, and to my best knowledge, it might take several months to publish. So plan accordingly. You do research during second, third, fourth year, and then you want to publish, and then you have to wait several months for publication.
Thank you. So for all the students from St. James, all the students from all over,
Students from St. James, I think they know that because they also have three options. That means during RHM course, then second is during rotations, and then they have research elective. So they have three opportunities to express their interest in certain field or specialty. And I would like also to mention that our students have, we offer help to our students for residency application, starting with online instructions, how to perform interview, then we made recently mock interview, not to mention administration, clinical department that helps in every single step, and also writing, preparing personal statement, and so on and so forth. It is not my department, but well, that is what St. James is doing for their students. And for the research, of course, everybody can ask whatever they want. I'm there to help.
Thank you so much. Our next question for Mr. Nelson and Dr. Gujarati. Now that the upcoming step 1 will be pass or fail, how can IMG students do to strengthen their portfolio? The fact that we no longer have a numerical score for step 1. Mr. Nelson, would you like to go first?
Sure. So that's going to be a pretty interesting development for us as residency programs as we start to, review and analyze the applications that we get. What's been interesting in our initial years of recruiting is that step 1, I'd only consider it a portion of the application. It's something that we look at, we scrutinize, but we also analyze it from a holistic standpoint as well. So I think one thing that and I don't know, concern might be too strong of a word, but we'll have to think about is that what could be really telling sometimes in an application is if someone had a lower but passing score on step 1 and then had a really high score on step 2. Sometimes it was really interesting and helpful for us as programs to see that kind of development and that kind of change there. So I think it'll be tough to lose that metric. But that being said, kind of my personal opinion about this is it will make other parts of the application get more scrutiny and won't be as much of a, the filtering will now just happen really with pass or fail. And the expectation would be that, you'd hope to see most of those as passes on the first time with a good score on the step 2 exam accordingly there. But it also might make us look more closely at your letters of recommendations, medical transcripts, MSPE, some of those other portions of the application that aren't quite as numerically driven.
All right, thank you. Dr. Gujarati, would you care to add anything to Mr. Nelson?
No, I think that answer is on point. The way I always sort of picture this is sort of, if you picture 4 boxes, you've got the high achievers that have a strong application and a strong score. You've got the low achievers that have a poor application and a poor score. And I think what we're really talking about is the folks that are in the middle 2 boxes. Mm-hmm. Historically, especially for IMGs, the step 1 is a huge point of focus and attention. And I think hopefully taking that stress off of just this one data point will help them strengthen their entire application, which in my world, at least, we operate as a meritocracy. We want people who are going to be good at this job, who are going to want to do this job well, to be in our residencies and training programs. And so focus on strengthening your entire application and move away from just focusing on step one, which I think a lot of students do to their detriment. I think on the other hand, it did help if you did really well on step one and you have a weaker application, that data point did help those students maybe get a foot in the door. But I don't think that's the vast majority of people. I think this will help people work on strengthening their entire application, which is what residencies really are actually looking at.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question, going back to Mr. Nelson. Since Step 2 CS is delayed, a lot of students from unaccredited schools simply cannot even apply for MASH this year. Any advice for students who cannot take Step 2 CS?
So that's been one of the fun but challenging parts of the application cycle this year. I'll be honest, it has led to a lot of tough questions. I think I feel much worse for the applicants by far, just the uncertainty of when they're going to be able to take it. But it also brings up questions for us, related to ECFMG certification. And I think you touched on it. If you're one of those individuals who is not going to be able to utilize one of the pathways that the ECFMG set up in order to address this issue, it could raise some questions about how you proceed accordingly there. And for us as a program, there's questions because USMLE, you have to pass all of your steps in order to get licensed. And then, there's sometimes questions of, the Step 3 exam, many people take that during residency training. Well, are people going to have to take that Step 2 exam during residency training? Is there going to be questions of when they get time off to do that, any delays? So it just is creating a lot of questions, challenges. For those individuals who are not able to take the Step 2 exam that they need and who are coming from a program where they won't be able to utilize one of those ECFMG pathways, it is just kind of an unfortunate byproduct. I think so ECFMG certification is really critical for residency programs there. So it's going to be kind of important to ask questions, see what other options you have available to you accordingly there. But then you can also use this if you're 100% unable to, match this year or participate in the application process, you can use this as a year to really strengthen your application, get involved in some of the experiences. We had a good conversation about research experiences people can try and get involved with. You could utilize this year as a way to really strengthen your application, get some interesting experiences so that when you go into the application cycle, in subsequent years, you have something to show for this kind of this time there and can be able to speak to some of those things. But it is something that's really unprecedented. It's something we're all trying to navigate and go through accordingly. But no easy answers to that. But the big thing though is that if you have time, if there's a year off, what we really like to see as programs is something to show for that. So and then also the opportunity to explain that. And I think just given the craziness of everything going on, there will be some, you'll definitely be given the chance to explain why things couldn't work out accordingly there, but also use this time to develop and boost your application.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. That's probably one of the best answers I've heard. For all my wonderful moderators, can you make sure that you're replying to attendees as well as panelists? Just make sure it goes to attendees as well. Our next question for Dr. Goss. Something we've been hearing about is that family medicine physicians are performing more emergency medicine roles in rural areas. Do you have any thoughts of medical students going into family medicine with focus on emergency medicine in rural areas? Or should students apply directly towards emergency medicine?
I just want to thank everybody for the time in St. James and the South Texas Emergency Medicine for letting me be here, this huge panel of amazing people that I actually get to be a part of. So, but as far as my opinion, I'm family practice trained. I can speak to my experience. So I was family practice trained, but I trained in a rural program. honestly, in my mind, I had planned to do the old guard kind of doctor. You know, I was going to admit my own patients, catch babies. I mean, I had all that in my head when I did family medicine. But you know, I got out and realized, you know, that kind of thing's kind of gone away. It just doesn't really exist. And I got into doing more emergency medicine in rural areas. I'm sorry, as far as to the question, um, I think rural area family medicine is absolutely something you could do. However, short answer, if I was going to do emergency medicine, I would probably 100%, if that's all I wanted to do, then I would go emergency medicine. Family medicine is great for giving you diversity because I do hospitalist, I can do clinic, I can do other things, but hands down, I will totally say Dr. Moore can probably throw a line in from the door whenever I have to go in and take me a minute. These guys are trained amazing. But I was fortunate to have a rural program where I was unopposed. And actually, ICU, hospitalist, I was just trying to make the most of all the time that I used and took those skills with me, which have really served me well once I came out. So short answer is if you want to do emergency medicine, you're 100% sure that's how you want to do. I would encourage people to go emergency medicine, but absolutely family medicine from what I've seen, and I'm personally doing it for emergency medicine, it works. So.
Thank you. Dr. Moore, any thoughts about that? I really enjoyed how Dr. Goss talked about the old guard. But Dr. Moore, do you have any thoughts about the family to EM in rural areas compared to straight EM?
Sure, and thank you, Doc, for the kind words. You know, in rural areas that are not, you know, dense metropolitan areas, including South Texas and, you know, many places around the U.S., there is a shortage of, board-certified trained emergency physicians. And definitely, I have the privilege of working in the emergency department with many great family-trained physicians in the emergency department, and some of them, they're just excellent. You know, they surpass some other colleagues that are trained in emergency medicine. I agree that in family medicine, there's a lot of versatility. You can also do inpatient. You can also do outpatient, which in emergency medicine we're not as trained to do. So I guess the other side of it is like, how difficult is it to get into emergency medicine versus family medicine? If emergency medicine, you know, after assessing your chances, the chances are not great because it's too competitive, and you didn't do an emergency medicine rotation, or you don't have a cord letter. I think cord letter, for those that don't know, Council of Residency Directors for Emergency Medicine. There's some requirement for some standardized letter. I'm not sure if that's still going on, but that was during my time anyway. So anyway, if your chances are not great, then the path of family medicine, and if you really are passionate about emergency medicine, taking it from there is a possibility. There are also some, I guess, unofficial fellowships in emergency medicine after family medicine. I don't think they're ACGME accredited, but you can find some of those where it's more kind of like structured training for a year in the ER, typically for lower pay because you're in training, but then you can, you know, say that you had like a additional year of formal training in emergency medicine. So you would be able to do that. So yeah, I hope I was able to answer the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sorry. So you mentioned, Dr. Moore, that there's a huge shortage of physicians in the U.S. So I do understand that IMGs can play a very large role in kind of fulfilling that shortage in physicians. How important is it, this question for all the panelists and all the moderators today, how important are for IMG students to graduate from an accredited school? Is that something that is critical, or is the amount of training kind of making up for that? But how important is the fact that students graduating from an accredited school? Open question to all panelists.
you saying for residency or?
Just from graduating from medical school, so coming from an accredited medical school.
I would say it's definitely pretty critical when you're applying to licensing and so forth.
Yes.
I mean, every license, I've got a Kentucky license, West Virginia, every one. Asking about where you trained for your medical school.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, I didn't even consider that, accredited by who, Roland? Dr. Zhang?
I know the big ones are CAMHP, ACCM are some major players. We've heard rumors of schools that were not accredited trying to fulfill the role of supplying strong medical student applicants. But at the same time, I think being from an accredited medical school, there's a level of ethics, level of that the student can do the job properly. So I think the fact that they're properly accredited, there's a level of prestige, I guess, to come along with that.
Well, I always see accreditation as accountability too. So, and it's the same thing with our ACGME programs. Like we submit to the process of accreditation because it's important for us to be accountable to our trainees and to the community that we serve and make sure we can operate programs within the confines of their requirements. So I see accreditation as a large piece of making sure that you're accountable, that you're meeting all the necessary requirements in order to do your job effectively. But I would say the key thing though is licensing and ECFMG certification. So in the end, residency programs, you have to be able to get a medical license in the United States, and they will look at your medical school and its accreditation status as part of that for most of the states. And then the ECFMG as well. It's really important for that process too.
Right, and my name is Kaushik. I work with the administration. I just wanted to quickly add that I believe the ECFMG is becoming very, very restrictive. In fact, because of step 2 being, the step 2 CS being canceled, if you aren't from an accredited medical school, you cannot even apply for a match in 2021.
Right.
So it is of critical importance. And as far as St. James is concerned, we have all the boxes checked off in that regard.
Well, thank you everyone for that. I'd like to introduce the next moderator, Dr. Brianna Saltstone. She is a recent graduate from St. James, the St. Vincent campus. During her undergraduate career, she acted as the academic fellow where she designed and taught the examination reviews to 3rd and 4th year students, facilitated tutor sessions, and worked with students both individually and in groups. As a volunteer with National Alliance on Mental Illness in Chicago, she provided education to middle and high school students, teachers, and families about mental health, in addition to helping students to develop healthy coping strategies and resilience. Dr. Saltstone, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. All right, so our next question is from Mr. Nelson. So in regards to the filtering process, once it takes into account step scores, what is typically, in your experience, one of the first things a program looks at in regards to, is it having step 3 or a personal statement, that kind of thing?
So, and again, I'll just speak for our experience with respect to step 3, because I did see a few Q&As regarding step 3 specifically there, and I apologize if I'm doing that, answering some of that incorrectly there. But step 3, so the way we look at it is it's one of those nice to have things. That being said, though, our experience has been the vast majority of our residents take their step examination during training. We have a guideline that we expect them to take it within the first 18 months of their residency training. And we look at it as one of the promotion criteria from the 2nd year of training to the 3rd year of training. That being said, many programs handle this in different ways, and that's just our practice there. Step 3 really also relates to sometimes the visa status that you're able to get. So if you're going to a program that sponsors visas, typically the ones that you'll be eligible for is either a J1 visa, which is an educational visa that allows you to stay in the country during the duration of your training, but then has the requirement that you have to return to your country of origin for a certain amount of time before you can return to the United States on a different visa classification. Or you can get a J1 waiver position, typically that has you serving in an underserved area for a certain number of years. Or with an H-1B visa, that's more of an employment visa. that allows you, that doesn't have a return requirement there, but allows you to stay in the United States as long as you can find an organization that will sponsor that H-1B visa. In order to be eligible for an H-1B visa, you have to have passed all of your STEP examinations. So that's something we would look at more related to the visa process. But to get back to your initial question about the filtering process, what I would say is that most program directors, at least from my experience, but many people can handle this differently. After they have their batch of applicants who make it through the filter of their initial criteria, they will look at the letters of recommendation, to my earlier point where they want to see, you know, someone from the specialty speaking to their rotations and experience there. Doesn't mean all the letters have to be from someone in the specialty, but they like to see a couple of them there. They also like to look at the MSPE just to get that overall appraisal of your performance. Personal statement, I find the personal statements very interesting as well. And that is, you should see that as a really good opportunity to set yourself apart, get us to know, help us get to know the candidates a little bit better beyond what we can read on the paper of your application. Sometimes there's questions of whether or not you should do individualized personal statements. I leave that up to people's discretions there, but I do feel that it is an important part of it. So I would say kind of the order and what most people look at correspondingly is your personal statement, letter of recommendations, MSPE. Many programs will also look directly at the USMLE transcript as well, because though you can filter out for scores, they haven't really done a good way to filter out for whether or not you have any failures on the steps. So just because you made it through the filters initially doesn't mean you've passed all the steps on your first attempt. So often program directors will take a look at the official transcript as well to see that.
Awesome, thank you. That's interesting. All right, so our next question is for Mr. Nelson again, as well as Dr. Gujarati. So some programs have recently begun implementing new ways to assess applicants' personalities, ways in which they might handle conflict or approach specific like hypothetical situations, etc., like that, the Casper test. I know we touched on this already, but given the upcoming changes to step one becoming pass-fail, what are some other ways in which you predict programs might start trying to see these different ways they can assess? So like different changes that they'll adapt to.
I can jump in.
Okay.
I mean, so these behavioral type interviews have been going on in other fields for a long time. And so it was eventually going to come into medicine, but you can prepare for these, but the preparation for these is sort of life experience. I encourage people to read a lot. I encourage people to get a diverse background of experiences while they're going through rotations. As far as what programs are going to do to sort of assess students differently now that step one's pass-fail, I still think it comes back to the entirety of the application. I think you want to have a strong application. And again, the earlier you are in your training, the earlier you are and have time to strengthen your application, do things that are interesting to you, follow through on those things, do things that are interesting to you in the field of medicine. That way you can describe and explain your decisions and strengths and weaknesses on your application in a more personal and passionate way. Again, I can't stress how easy it is to tell when somebody is really not all in to what they're doing, when they give examples that sort of fall short or fall hollow. And so it's very important that you start doing things and start incorporating things into your life now that you find valuable, that you're passionate about.
I would agree with that 100%. The behavioral-based interview, I find much more. So it's been interesting seeing some of the other programs sending out, you know, those 100-question personality examinations that people have to complete there. You know, we don't necessarily do that. I'm not as familiar with the data there. That you might very well see an overall transition to those types of platforms and those types of analysis in the future of residency training. I think it's been actually relatively rare up until recently, but I think everyone with the transition to virtual interviews just wants more of those data points. But I would echo 100% about the behavior-based questions. As you prepare for your interview, you should be able to speak to situations where you can demonstrate those traits that we really look at for residency. So I think of resiliency. It's really great. Resiliency is just one example, but there's many other things that we look for. And even if it's just, Googling behavior-based interview questions, there's many, many different resources out there. I would look at all of them. I would think of stories that you could tell that demonstrate that you have those kind of traits there, and be prepared to speak to that. Now, that doesn't mean sound like a robot and say, okay, ask this question. Here's my pre-canned answer there. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes for us as residency programs, the most telling trait of how you're going to perform is how you have performed during medical school. So I would always, if you can, during those behavior-based questions too, use an example from your clinical experience on rotations there. So if you can say, I had a patient who, I had a doctor who, if you can really ground it in those types of experiences you've had during your rotations, that can be much more valuable from a behavior-based standpoint. That being said, anything that kind of tells a story that highlights the traits that we're looking for in those questions will be valuable. But I always think that, if you can really relate it to clinical experience, sometimes that's what we're really looking for, because we're trying to evaluate how you're going to perform in our residency program.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so our last question is for all of the panelists. So in regards to post-interview communication, some students will send thank you notes via email, some will send thank you notes in the cards in the mail. Is there one that you would recommend over the other, given that students won't have the opportunity to see you face-to-face this year?
So I can talk about that. So it's depends on the programs. Sometimes they like that, sometimes they don't. So it's all about how you perform when you are talking with the program director and then other interviewers. And then in my opinion, they don't really care about thank you notes or anything. It's just about how you perform. That's how I understand. But yeah, anyone can jump in.
I actually asked a couple of my colleagues, friends I have that are actually that are medical directors and coordinators. I was just asking them about that, the thank you notes, and as she said, some of them don't care, but if you do it, their recommendation was make it personal. Something about the experience you had, or something about the specific program. Don't do the stamped, just a thank you to every interview you do. And that was one of the points they made. They get a lot of those, and it's like it's more annoying. But if you actually get somebody that's got took the time to write out a note, just, hey, thank you for your consideration, and made it personal, and you took time to research the program, and what they're doing and what their mission is and about their residents, that I was told. Again, I can just speak to my colleagues that I know that are directors and what they told me, and maybe it'll help somebody. And if you do decide to do a thank you letter, try to personalize it, would be my advice.
I agree completely. And I would say one interesting thing that we saw during the application was you can connect it to a specific conversation you had. So if you interviewed with the faculty and you said, I really enjoyed our conversation regarding XYZ, or, it was really helpful, the advice you gave me on this topic, that helps make the connection to, oh, that's right, we talked to it, we had a really good conversation, and can be much more helpful than just a blanket, standard thank you note there. I think they're nice to get. When we get them, I always put them in the applicants folder about, their overall information, and made sure that people were aware that they had taken the effort to send that. Because I do think it shows the extra step there. Sometimes we got really elaborate stationery and all those things, and I don't feel you should feel compelled to do like a really elaborate, like pop-up card or something like that. But either an email, I would say focus more on the content of the thank you note versus the kind of, stationery, all those other things. And really, if you're going to take the effort to do it, a quick note about, I really enjoyed our conversation on this. It was helpful you explaining this part to me, really helps make it stand out, and also helps connect you and makes you stand out as a resident, because then that's a trigger for whoever was interviewing you to say, all right, this was a really great conversation. I'm really glad they brought this up. And then they will often bring that up when we're evaluating your application with respect to the rank order list.
if you let me tell a few words, I like I love when I get a thank you letter, and actually I get it all the times after students finish their graduation paper, and I like even more when the student provide me with the feedback of the paper, and after that, when they keep me in the loop with their residency training and how residency training is going on, and so on and so forth. That is what I like the best. But it's me. Thank you.
That's what I talk to you, right, Dr.
Yeah, I would say that it's one of those things that's again, a genuinely nice thing to do. Again, as long as you're doing it from the right place, make it personal. It doesn't have to be a very long note, but I think it's one of those things that takes very little time on your part. It can take a little bit of effort. It's definitely not going to hurt you, but it may help. And so I think it's worthwhile to do. Whether you send an email or a card, that's totally up to you. But I think it's worthwhile doing. I think somebody had asked who you address it to. Again, you can send, if you're going to send a couple, I'd send it to the program director and they can divvy them out. But generally, it's what we do, or we just stick it in the applicant's folder.
Well, thank you, everyone. Before we jump into Q&A, I'd like to introduce Dr. Therese Masri. She's a recent graduate from St. Vincent of St. James School of Medicine as well. She has a passion for teaching and thrives in helping others. Her desire to be a catalyst for her students' growth led her to become a tutor as early as in her high school years. Wow. She started teaching medicine early in medical school, is known to analyze one's weaknesses and build up her students' confidence by helping them incorporate evidence-based study methods, master complex medical concepts, and develop test-taking skills. Dr. Masri, the floor is yours for Q&A. Okay. Any questions that we
Thank you,
can
Dr.
go over?
Sang. I'd like to thank Dr. Moore, Dr. Gauss, Dr. Gujarati, Dr. Filipovich, and Mr. Nelson.
Dr. Masri, I think you're frozen.
Yes, I'm sorry, my web. Dr. Moore, Dr. Gauss, Dr. Gujarati, Dr. Filipovich, and Mr. Nelson, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your informative responses. I'd like to tell every attendee, thank you for attending today. And if you do have any questions, we'll be posting them on our website on stjames.org. And if you do have any questions for moderators, you could email us at usmle@mail.sjsm.org, and I'll post that up in the question and A.
Therese, can I just add one
Thank you
more
all.
thing before we go?
Of course.
So I'm always amazed that you guys hear advice from these folks that have gone through the process and have been out in practice. I will tell you what sort of separates people out is the folks that are willing to take the advice and move forward with it. And so I can leave you with a couple things. Being a med student is great. Your only job is to educate yourself and learn something that you're proposing that you are passionate about. And so there are a lot of things that are at your disposal that you don't realize. One is that major conferences are generally free or incredibly reduced cost. In this day and age where everybody's moved to Zoom, you can get a world of contacts, a world of knowledge from leaders in the world at their specific specialties for essentially free. You won't get the swag that I did going to these conferences, but it's worthwhile to do. You'll have a base of knowledge that's superior to others. Two is practice genuine curiosity. There's no faking it in this. If you fake it, you will be found out. You will not be able to meet the demand of you when it's asked of you. And so learn for the sake of learning. Learn things that have nothing to do with medicine. Read books. Read about your own education. There's plenty of education theory out there, behavioral economics, business of medicine, other portions of healthcare that will benefit you as you move forward. There's no magic to getting the interview right. There's no magic to getting a personal statement right. If you're genuine and you're passionate, that will come true, or that will come through in those things. And so take that advice, do those things. There's people on this panel who have started residencies, have been through this med school, have been through the FMG process, have been successful as clinicians. Take the advice you get today and actually do something with it. I think sitting in you've gotten a good start by starting to do these things where you're getting onto panels and asking questions. But the next step is to actually do it. And I think that's where people fall short, is that you buy 50 books, you read one of them. If you do that, you go to 50 conferences, but you don't ask questions and don't delve into the subject matter. Take that next step. That's what'll get you there.
Thank you.
And I always like to
Definitely
say in these
Thank you all
situations
for
when I
attending.
talk with med students too, there is that I really commend everyone who goes on this journey of medical school residency to become a physician. It is a very difficult path, and every year with recruitment, I always am so impressed by just reading these applications and seeing everyone's unique life experiences, their journey along this path there. So you should all be, as medical students, I commend you for taking this journey and going through the challenges of medical school residency, all of that, and know that it's a very difficult route and it's very hard work, and you should be all very commended for that. But it's an important journey there. I think you need to use this interview process to discuss that as well, kind of talk about your unique experience along the way of becoming a physician and kind of what you can bring to the table, and don't be afraid to highlight your accomplishments as well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Yes.
I hope we can all benefit from what you guys said today. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can kindly ask all panelists, to stay a little bit, if you guys have time, to go over the questions some of the students might have asked you and answer them.
Yeah, sure. I have time a little bit. Yeah. Go on.
Thank you guys so much. Therese, I think considering the number of questions we received, I think the best solution for everybody would be to copy these questions, and we can potentially at a later date reach out to the panelists, because it is a Sunday and I definitely don't want to impose very much on anybody. So what we'll do is, panelists, again, thank you so much for taking the time out on a Sunday. I know this is probably one of the few days, especially Dr. Goss, who's been working 25 hours straight. So we won't keep you any longer. We'll copy these questions, and one of our counselors will reach out to you, depending on who we think would be the best person to answer the questions. And by the end of the week, we'll post them all of this on our website. I think that would be the best thing for us to do. In the meantime, thank you so much, Dr. Moore, for actually involving us in the South Texas Emergency Medicine Conference. It was an honor and a pleasure, and we'd like to be involved in the years to come as well. I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson, I believe you were going to say something?
No, I was just saying I'm happy to answer the questions too. So if someone just wants to shoot an email over to me with the questions in a list, I can sit down, type some responses and things like that.
Awesome. Excellent. So we'll do exactly that. Thank you guys so much. Again, thank you so much for the participants. I do hope that this was helpful. And here at St. James, as we always keep saying, our student success is our success, and we really want to see our students successful and reach the heights that Dr. Goss and Dr. Gujarati have achieved, and even further. So thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful Sunday. And thank you all the panelists, Mr. Nelson, Dr. Filipovich, Dr. Gujarati, Dr. Goss, and Dr. Moore. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
guys.
Mr.
Good luck,
Council.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Bye.
All right. I'm in the midst of copying all the questions into a Word doc right now.
Okay. All right, perfect. I am not ending the meeting basically for that very reason.
Yeah, thank you. I'm almost done, I think.
My internet keeps cutting off. I'm so sorry, guys.
Okay.
No worries. I mean, what we should do is probably, keep this running in the background and we'll just jump on a call. Thank you so much, Allison, for jumping in there.
Not a problem, Kaushik.
Yeah, thank you. I'll give you a call later on today. Have a good one. Yeah, and we'll probably send you the list of questions too, so you can help us kind of answer those when you get a chance.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Okay.
All right. I don't think all of them are obviously,
Relevant, yes.
but I'm just copy and pasting them all because it's not like, who am I to decide, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave. Okay. Is that okay?
All right, and I'm going to call all of you guys.